Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Build a Lot Acres. Today's episode is going to be the pros and cons of a super split log splitter. Stay tuned.
One small town New England family living out their adventures, one day at a time, sharing for the whole world to see. This is Build a Lot Acres. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video.
Oh, hello there. So, like I said, in today's video we're going to be discussing the pros and cons of owning a super split log splitter. Now these could apply to probably most kinetic splitters. There's a bunch of different brands that make kinetic style flywheel splitters. Super split is kind of the original and the one best known, but this could apply to different brands. But today is going to be specifically for the super split. Now let me preface this with saying I've owned this super split for around 10 years now. So this isn't a 1 week review or a 1 month review or even a 1 year review. I've used this splitter for 10 years. I've had hundreds of cords put through it. I'm not a commercial firewood splitter, but I do burn a lot of wood, and I've helped other family members split some of their wood. So this splitter's seen a number of cords.
As you can see, it has been through a lot of cords because as of right now we have probably over 30 cords between this section of wood behind me. There's a little bit over there, and also our woodshed, as some of you may have seen, as well as the, what are they called, the containers like the
IBC containers?
The IBC containers. So we have a lot of wood, and that's not all that he's split either. Like, we've been living here for 10 years, and we've had a wood stove that entire time, and this thing has held up really well. Right, Dad?
Right. So I'm not going to go into details about the super split. I have a whole video, an introduction to the super split, that tells you all the details about it, different models, like how you can order different things. So I'm not going to get into all that. If you want to see that kind of stuff, please go check out my other videos. I also have videos of it in action, splitting different species of wood, different sizes of wood, different lengths. So if you want to see that, please go check out that video. I have several videos up. And I also have, as you can see, some custom things in this. I have a table with some drop down legs. I have a tow hitch.
And as you can see, it's very sturdy.
So those are also in a video. It's a build video on the channel. So there's, like I said, there's multiple videos for the super split on the channel. And before we go any further, please take a moment to like and subscribe if you haven't already, if you enjoy our content. We're really trying our best to get up to 1,000 subscribers, so please help us with that goal.
And also, starting a few days ago, we did create a TikTok for this YouTube channel, and it just has like little snippets and clips of our tractors, our chickens. Our new intro is on there, and just a few different things. If you have TikTok, if you could follow us on TikTok, that would be wonderful.
We're also on Facebook and Instagram.
Correct. We'll put all of our socials on the screen at one point in this video, and if you could take the time to follow us on those, it would be absolutely amazing. We appreciate it very much.
Today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of owning a super split, what I think they should change, what I like, etc. So let's get into it. So the wedge. I like the wedge, although I wish they at least gave an option for a taller wedge, which they do actually on the higher model splitters. But one of the things I find a lot is that when I'm splitting wood, you just miss the middle of the wood by an inch or two, so you end up with strings that you got to kind of either hit with an axe or a hatchet, or brute force it apart with, you know, by pulling it apart with your arms. So I wish they gave the wedge a little more height. Even an inch or inch and a half would make a big difference on, even if it was an upcharge of, you know, $50 or whatever. I think it would be an option a lot of people would go for. And it would also allow you to double stack halves, so you have more height, so you could do even more. Which is we're gonna continue with the wedge. This might be controversial, but I think if they offered a 4-way slip-on wedge, I think it would be a big hit. A lot of the wood that I split, you know, it might be 8-10 inches around with no knots. I think this would have plenty of grunt to push through the 4-way wedge. Now, obviously, I could see super split's side. They probably don't want people trying to split forked pieces or knotty pieces and not being happy with the results, so they don't even offer one. I've also seen people on YouTube make their own 4-way wedge. The problem, I think, is as your ram comes out, you don't have a lot of room between the wedge and the ram. So if your wedge came out too far, your four-way, you could interfere with the ram, which is kind of why I don't bother trying to do it. But I think the wedge, like having a four-way wedge and a taller wedge, could be two things that would make the splitter maybe just a little bit better. The next thing is the ram system, or the roller bearing system. Now, to get the upgraded roller bearing with the extra bearings, we have, I think, it's either 4 or 6 bearings versus the 1. You have to get the HD or the special edition, the SE model. The J models like this don't come with it. They only have the 1 roller bearing, which tends to get gummed up easily, has a flat spot so it won't roll good. I think if they offered that upgraded system with all the splitters and just, you know, raise the prices by $100 or whatever it costs to offset that, I think people would have a lot less complaints. That's one of the biggest complaints, probably the biggest complaint with these super splits, is that roller bearing gets a flat spot, it doesn't roll good, it doesn't return well. So I think that's something that they could work on.
Another thing that we kind of wish was different about it, but obviously we found a solution to it, is it being a bit longer, just because it doesn't hold a lot of wood, and it just kind of falls off, which is fine, but you also don't want it to rot or anything in the ground. So that is one thing that we wish were different, so we fixed it by adding this.
So they do offer bigger,
yeah.
They offer the oversized production tables, which is an upcharge, which I get. They didn't offer that when I bought this one 10 years ago. They do offer it now, so I think they've kind of remedied that in a way. So one of the other things I wish they would do is the towable capability. Now this is set up with kind of off-road tires. It has a narrower stance, which is nice for fitting in small places and trails. You can tow it around by hand easily, but I wish they offered a highway towing package with tires that were meant for the road, that had, you know, bigger, maybe skinnier tires that were a bigger wheelbase so it was wider and more stable. Because I mean, the reality is a lot of people want to tow these and they really can't. They have to put it in a trailer or a truck. And if you had the ability to tow it on the road going even, you know, 40, 50 miles an hour, that would be a huge thing for a lot of people. So that's another thing I wish they would kind of at least give an option for, an upcharge to make it highway towable. So I think the last thing I'm going to talk about that I wish they would add is a log lift. Now, there are other companies, I'm not going to name names, but it has the same initials as SuperSplit. They went out of business, and they offered a log lift, which would fit on the SuperSplits, and a lot of people bought them and put them on SuperSplits, even though it was a different brand. It was just a manual, it was a large lever that you pulled, and it picked up the log lift, and it allowed you to get easy access to your logs. Now, I'm not talking about, you know, a fancy hydraulic lift like a lot of the big hydraulic splitters have, because these don't have the capability to hook up into a hydraulic system. Just something simple like a lever or maybe a winch. I wish SuperSplit just offered some way to add a log lift. I know they talked about it. They talked about having one in design. I don't think they ever actually did it, but I think that would be a huge help, because a lot of people physically can't lift large logs onto here. You know, I happen to be able to lift pretty big pieces of wood, but a lot of people are elderly, or they're smaller framed, or maybe they're, you know, different sex, and they can't pick up a piece that big.
Or kids.
So they're kind of forced to either half the wood with a big saw, which they also might not have, or they might have to split it by hand with a maul and wedges, which they might not want to do. So if they offered a log lift, I feel like a lot of people would opt to buy it. SuperSplit would make more money, they'd have less complaints about not getting big wood onto the splitter, and it'd be a win for everybody. So hopefully SuperSplit sees this video and they take this into consideration. So those would be most of the cons to owning a SuperSplit. Now let's go over some of the positives.
There's also a lot of positives with this, otherwise we probably wouldn't have kept it for 10 years.
Now you see a lot of people on forums and stuff complain that the price is so much compared to, like, you know, they'll compare it to a box store $1,000 splitter that might be $800 on Black Friday. Those hydraulic splitters, you really can't, you're comparing something that does a cord every 3 hours with a 20-second cycle time to a commercial grade splitter that thousands and thousands of professional firewood people use to do hundreds of cords a year, and has a 2.5-second cycle time. So if you want to compare this to other splitters, you should be comparing it to maybe like a Timberwolf a Wolf Ridge, you know, those kind of splitters. And those are going to be in the $7,000-8,000 range, maybe even as high as $10,000. So to say that the Super Split is overpriced at, you know, I think they're around $3,000 right now for a J model. That's going to vary depending on if you need to get it shipped, what options you want, but you know, let's say $3,000 because that's probably around pretty close. If you're going to compare this to other splitters in the $3,000 range, you are not going to find one, I don't believe, that can do what this is going to do, unless you got maybe a tractor mounted splitter, but then you need a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 tractor to operate that splitter, so that's really not comparable either.
He got this splitter long before he got his Coyote, so at the time he didn't have a tractor that, like he's talking about, that could, sorry, there's a lot of mosquitoes out here. He didn't have a tractor that could handle it.
So let's compare apples to apples, friends. Let's compare a $3,000 standalone splitter with its own engine to other standalone splitters. If you know of one that can keep up to a Super Split and easily do a quarter an hour with one person from around, please, by all means, put it in the comments. I don't think there are any. I don't know of any. I've run Timberwolves. I've run American CLS. I've run, you know, a lot of the cheaper brands. I've run numerous different splitters. The Timberwolves I ran with TW5s and TW6, which was a friend of mine that sells hundreds and hundreds of cords a year. Those, yeah, if you always run into huge 30, 40 inch diameter pieces of wood, it's stupid to own something like this when you could have something like that with a log lift. But those TW5s and TW6 Timberwolves, look at the price, $10,000, $12,000. You're 4 times the price of this. It'd be like comparing a 1-ton dump truck to a quarter-ton truck. You're comparing apples to oranges, so let's compare apples to apples. So I like that. I also like that it's lightweight. It's easy to move around. Some of those bigger splitters that I mentioned previously, the Timberwolves, the Wolf Ridge, you know, look at the shipping weight of those splitters. You're luck moving that around in your yard in the mud by hand. This probably weighs 300 or 400 pounds. I can easily pick this up and wheel it around different areas without having to hook it up to a tractor or a four-wheeler or a truck.
Just today when he moved it over here, he moved it from the barn to over here.
I wheeled it, you know,
really no problem.
I wheeled it 250, 300 feet over here with hardly breaking a sweat.
And there's a ton of mud over there
I
too.
probably couldn't even pick up a Timberwolf log splitter, never mind move it 300 feet without a machine. So it's quicker to set up and move around, so I like the nimbleness. It's also physically not as big as those bigger splitters. It's narrower, doesn't take up as much room. So that's another positive of the Super Split.
He keeps this just in his barn. He's really kept it in his barn since he built the barn, and it's been fine. Like, we can still fit tons of other things. That he can fit his Coyote in there, a ton of his tools, and it really just doesn't take up that much room. It just kind of sits on the side until he needs it, so it's pretty nice.
I'm sorry if you guys do hear a rooster in the background. It's just part of being on a homestead, you know, kind of farm here. We have how many chickens? 20? 19 chickens. So, I mean, I can't help, you're going to hear roosters. It's part of the atmosphere. It'd be like filming in a city and hearing garbage trucks, or, I mean, it's just part of life. I can't help that. So.
Rooster's noisy.
One of the other things I really like is it has a small engine. You know, this is a 6 horsepower Robin engine.
Yeah.
The biggest engine they offer, I believe, is 9 horsepower Honda, which is on the SE. And even that is going to be a lot smaller than some of the, you know, 11, 13 plus horsepower engines on the big hydraulics, because you need a big engine to run the hydraulic system. So that small engine is going to mean less fuel you're going to use, which is, you know, here in 2021, fuel's not cheap. So if I can save 2-3 gallons, 4 gallons of gas a day, I'm saving over the course of, you know, if I did this for a living and I split 5 or 6 days a week, you could be talking a lot of money at the end of the year. You could be talking thousands of dollars in gas savings. So a small engine can be much more fuel efficient. So another positive is the sizes of the splits. When you have a large hydraulic, you tend to have a 4-way, a 6-way, maybe a box wedge. So you're kind of stuck with certain size pieces. You can't control how big your pieces are. Some people don't like those smaller pieces. Some people want bigger pieces for this stove. Some people want
smaller pieces, some
square
people want
pieces,
average pieces. But with this, since there's only one wedge, you can, like, since it's only a one-way wedge, you can really cut it however way you want.
Yeah, you have much more control over
usually
the size of your piece.
Yeah, Like usually when I help him, we'll cut the big log in half and then we'll cut it in quarters. And then if that's still too big, we can cut it again because it's a one way and you can cut it any way you want.
I can cut square pieces, triangles, half circles. I mean, you really can't do that with a big hydraulic unless you take all the multi-way wedges on, and then you're still stuck with that slower hydraulic, you know, so.
You can see that here as well. We have circular pieces, like some smaller trees. We have these like triangle-ish ones. We have different shaped ones. We have a couple square ones in here. There's really any shape that you can make with the one way, which is really nice.
So the last thing that I think we're going to talk about for a positive is going to be the simplistic design of a kinetic splitter.
There's really no hydraulics, no hydraulic hoses, no things like that that you need to worry about going wrong because it's just a very simple design. It's easy to work on, easy to fix if something happens because it's not that complicated, so you can really do it yourself just by kind of watching a few YouTube videos maybe.
Yeah, watching YouTube videos like ours. I mean, I have a video where I replaced the roller bearing. That's probably the biggest thing you're going to change. It's a few dollar bearing. You might have to change it every once a year or something if you don't do it commercially. If you're just splitting 8, 10, 12 cords a year like I am, 15 cords, you might only do it every 2 years if you keep the beam nice and lubed. So just to go over a quick recap, the negatives, I would say, not even negatives, things I wish that SuperSplit would address would be the wedge height, adding a potential 4-way wedge as an option, a log lift, giving it an option to be road towable.
And longer.
Well, they have the table, so I think that would be it for the negatives, recap. And then the positives would be the nimbleness, the weight, the fuel economy, simplicity, and being able to pick your size of your pieces. So as you can see in our video, there's numerous positives, there's numerous things that I wish they would at least address and think about adding.
It really just depends on your situation and what works best for you. Like if you have limited space, maybe you're better off just buying firewood. If you have a lot of space and you sell it, maybe you're better off buying a more expensive one, like a hydraulic one. But for our situation, this is kind of just what's best for us.
So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please stay tuned for the next one.